It's a troubled world. Europe is in deep trouble. China is scary. And America, which is surrounded by shaky neighbors, no longer has the power to pull the rest of the world along. That's Paul Krugman's assessment of the current global economic situation, despite some early signs of recovery.
Well, that's right. In an exclusive chat with ET Now's Supriya Srinath, the Nobel Laureate says the situation is really bad as far as China is concerned. A real estate bubble is waiting to burst in the mainland, and the fiscal slippage is visible right from the municipality levels. He says India, in contrast, is better off and could take up the lead role provided the government gets its act together. Paul Krugman's assessment of the world is our big story tonight.
I think you want to say that the broader picture is pretty bad. This is a world that's kind of suffering from a deflationary downdraft, which some parts are, a few places are defying a little bit. So the United States has some good news, India has some good news, but China is definitely scary. Europe is in deep trouble. So, this is, I think we need to say this is a very troubled world, and even the places that are doing well, certainly the United States, I'm optimistic for the next year, but give me beyond that, and I don't know, because it's not a good neighborhood to be in right now, and the neighborhood is the whole world.
So when you say a year from now you will not be so optimistic about the U.S., is this because of the other parts of the world, or can U.S. continue to still be what it was pre-crisis, the single engine of growth, so to say?
Well, the United States is certainly not big enough to be an engine for the rest of the world. We're just not that dominant anymore. Can we prosper when the rest of the world is not? Well, on paper, yes. I mean, the numbers are not impossible, but you have to think there's some spillover. Certainly the markets think so. Look at what's happened to U.S. long-term interest rates, which have collapsed, even though the U.S. numbers remain quite strong, but obviously the markets think that there'll be some blowback from what's happening elsewhere.
Fair point indeed. Let me just shift focus to China, because you say that there are reasons why you're worried about China. A, there is very low consumption there. What else worries you about our neighbor here?
I think the thing about China is, first of all, there is this wildly unbalanced economy. Essentially, roughly speaking, investment's 50% of GDP and consumption is 30%, and that needs to be reversed. And how are you going to do a 20-point of GDP switch, which doesn't have that long, there isn't infinite time to do that, without something falling by the wayside. So that's the fundamental Chinese problem. Then it turns out that you have major real estate bubble seems to be bursting, and the more you learn, the more things you discover that are reasons for concern. Who knew that local governments in China finance themselves to an important extent by land sales?
That's right.
So you have this sort of local level, urban and municipal level fiscal crisis that comes out of the bursting of the housing bubble. So all of these things accumulate. China looks like a very ripe candidate for a debt deflation spiral. Wow, not what you need right now, and certainly not what the world needs. So I hope that my pessimism is wrong, but it is scary.
Do you believe a receding China gives India the elbow room, the space to actually outpace China in some ways?
First of all, this is not really a competition, right? I mean, you are not, India should hope that China does not melt down, right? This is not good for any of us. And I think business cycles, even very bad business cycles, may pass. Whatever's going on in China, it may be that this is really bigger damage than all of that, but I wouldn't say that, for the next 5 years, China has a much rockier road than India, but that doesn't really tell you very much one way or the other about what things will look like 20 years from now.
You say India is one of the most definite countries of the future, but not the most definitive. What do you think are the challenges that lie for India, and what are the levers of growth that you're betting on?
We've now seen clear demonstration that India is capable of growth. All the notions that there was some fundamental stagnant element in the society was not true. India has actually achieved what we would regard as an incredible growth record if it weren't for the fact that China is even more incredible. So the strength is there, the possibilities are there. India has well-known problems. Infrastructure is inadequate. Reform is incomplete. There's still an awful lot of clearly, I'm not a huge free market fundamentalist, but India needs freer markets than it has.
That's right.
Education levels are still quite poor, especially at the basic level. There's still an incredible amount of deep grinding poverty. So all of these things are drags on Indian performance.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.